Spoilers for Avengers Endgame have always been a dime a dozen, and many of them are very easy to dismiss. But recently, someone claiming to work for a production company associated with the movie has shared major Endgame plot points on Reddit. Since we're going to be sharing them, be forewarned that this video could contain major spoilers or nothing more than mere speculation. But if you want to roll the dice, then by all means, keep watching. In general, we try to obtain information from reputable sources, but when it comes to spoilers, that's kinda tricky. Obviously, people sign non-disclosure agreements to prevent this sort of thing, and Disney and Marvel don't take kindly to people who violate them. This particular potential spoiler source claims to be an employee of a production company that worked on both Infinity War and Endgame. Apparently, there was a serious breach of information from someone employed by the production company. Information was starting to be spread throughout 4chan and Reddit, and Disney couldn't find out where the leak was coming from. So, in an attempt to maintain order, they terminated multiple production companies just in case any of them employed the source. According to the source, they weren't the ones sharing information originally, but after losing the contract, they lost their motivation to stay quiet. This source is known on Reddit as I'm Leaking, which is a very fitting name, albeit a weird one. So, now that we've identified our source, well, kind of, let's get on to the juicy details. We'll warn you again that this could potentially spoil Endgame for you if this information all turns out to be true. If you want to head back to safety, now's your chance. But if you want to glance into the restricted section of the Marvel library, keep watching. Although we all know the fourth Avengers movie is called Endgame, for quite a while we weren't sure what it would be. Kevin Feige of Marvel Studios hyped it up by saying it would provide insight into the movie. However, according to the source, the movie was always going to be called Endgame, and this had been the working title for years. They also claim the Disney marketing team does leak selective information online in order to get people excited for the upcoming movies. This makes sense considering some of the over-the-top leaks Marvel and Disney have clearly orchestrated. But apparently, when it came time to shoot Endgame, the cast and crew ran into some serious issues that ended up stalling production. The script simply didn't work right out of the gate and had to undergo massive rewrites. Even the actors weren't happy about the tone and direction of the movie, but Disney was putting pressure on the directors to just get it done. Doing some reshoots is pretty common, especially when filming a huge movie like Endgame, but the source claims that there were far more reshoots than the average fan realized. Due to contract renegotiations and script issues, there ended up being 4 reshoots, which involved pretty much everything being rewritten and reshot. One of the major aspects of the film that needed adjustment? Captain Marvel. Apparently, the Russo brothers, Stephen McFeely and Christopher Marcus, were all vehemently against including Captain Marvel in Endgame. They believed the movie was supposed to be the end of an era of MCU history, which did not include Captain Marvel. While they begged to limit the cast, Disney and Marvel Studios were desperate to shoehorn in Captain Marvel. Apparently, they wanted her to show up during Infinity War, and Endgame ended up being a compromise. But Disney still wanted to hedge their bets, and may have ended up diluting the movie as a result. They weren't sure how well Captain Marvel would perform, and wanted to make a backup plan. The idea was to shoot 2 versions of Endgame with different levels of involvement from Captain Marvel. That way, if her standalone movie flopped, she wouldn't be a huge part of Endgame. However, Brie Larson's agency wasn't happy about this, and it further complicated shooting. When getting into details of the plot, even this mysterious source admits it's impossible to be 100% accurate. After all, the movie was struggling with rewrites and adjustments when the source's company was terminated from the project. But as far as the source knows, the movie starts out with Captain Marvel investigating a distress call from Xandar. She had an alliance with the Nova Corps and feels guilty about not being able to save them from Thanos. She isn't able to respond to Nick Fury's distress call immediately because she's dealing with Nova Corps member Roman Day, whose family has been annihilated. Marvel comic book fans know Roman Day transfers his power to teenager Richard Rider, who becomes the hero known as Nova. The source also claims Roman Day and Captain Marvel will try to take out Thanos by themselves. And that plays out about as well as anyone could guess it would. Although they escape with their lives, they're no match for Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet, even though it's still busted after the end of Infinity War. Meanwhile, Ant-Man is still trapped in the quantum realm and ends up falling into a time vortex which spits him out in the year 1996. Nick Fury suspects Scott Lang of being a Skrull when he first meets him, and Lang says says he almost didn't recognize Fury without his eye patch, laying Phil's Fury in on the future, which is how he discovers Captain America is still alive and well. He also ends up obtaining a Kree device from Fury to assist in the fight against Thanos. During an interview about the Captain Marvel movie, Samuel L. Jackson let a piece of information slip which many believe to be a big spoiler. He claimed Captain Marvel has the ability to travel through time, an ability which was never demonstrated in the comic books. It turns out Captain Marvel can travel through time using this piece of Kree technology, although it comes with some strict limitations. In a different place in a different time, Tony Stark and Nebula discover the remnants of an ambitious project started by Rocket Raccoon. He had been installing a quantum system which would allow users to jump between different points in the universe. It's useful to be sure, but it's lacking a power source. Nebula decides to use the last Annulax battery to power the device, allowing them to return to Earth. This next bit might just validate some of the most popular fan theories out there surrounding Endgame. Our heroes do end up traveling through time, wearing new suits in order to traverse safely through the quantum realm and outer space. They revisit many famous Marvel movie moments, but our heroes aren't stealing the stones from their own timeline. They're making duplicates of them. At first, our heroes try to build their own gauntlet using vibranium, but it's far too unstable. Ultimately, the gauntlet is forged out of ultra-strong Uru metal from a surprising source. The last time we saw Thor's beloved hammer Mjolnir, it was resting in pieces after being crushed by Hela. These pieces of Uru are reforged into a new gauntlet, designed to fit the Hulk. Any average human who tried to wield an Uru weapon would undoubtedly be destroyed, so their options are pretty limited. Oh, and of course Thanos isn't just sitting around while all of this is going on. He's hunting our heroes through time, but he has a surprising disadvantage. Remember during Infinity War when he accused Doctor Strange of not using his greatest weapon? Yeah, turns out the Mad Titan was totally wrong about that, and the clues were there the whole time. Doctor Strange had cursed the Time Stone, leaving Thanos stuck in the events of the Avengers and buying our heroes some much-needed time. Using his powers, Doctor Strange is able to guide the Avengers who end up meeting up with the Ancient One to retrieve the Time Stone. Remember the scene from the Super Bowl trailer where we see Rocket opening a surprisingly rustic-looking door? According to the source, it's a CGI shot which uses real footage of Cove Harbor in Scotland. Rocket and Thor are looking for any Asgardian survivors, including Valkyrie, and although the source doesn't mention them specifically, we assume they're desperate to find Korg and Meek. They're going to need help from the Valkyries of legend, which means going to Valhalla, where they encounter Frigga and Odin. Unfortunately, the source doesn't mention anything about Loki, and if Thor encounters him at any point in the movie. At some point, our heroes manage to complete their own version of the Infinity Gauntlet and fill it with their copied stones. Thanos is bearing down on them while the Hulk tries to use the gauntlet. Unfortunately, it has a nasty side effect and causes his arm to explode. Captain America takes it upon himself to don the gauntlet and bring everyone back to life. He knows full well it'll mean sacrificing his own life, and despite Tony trying to stop him, he goes through with it. During the Avengers, there's a scene where Steve Rogers questions who Tony Stark would be without his armor. Tony informs him that he would still be a genius, billionaire, playboy, and philanthropist, all of which are pretty impressive. Steve calls Tony selfish and says he would never lay down on a wire and let someone crawl over him. Tony says he would probably just cut the wire, and Steve accuses him of taking the easy way out. When Tony tries to find a way around Steve sacrificing himself by using the new Infinity Gauntlet, Steve tells him, "No, Tony, sometimes we can't just cut the wire." Steve disintegrates as a result of the gauntlet, but succeeds in bringing back those who perished in the decimation. After that, it's an epic battle of Thanos versus pretty much everyone else. Thanos ends up defeated, and as a bonus, the Infinity Stones are destroyed as well. Unfortunately, they end up freeing a powerful cosmic entity poised to be the next great MCU villain. This makes sense since Thanos had been looming over the MCU for so long prior to him actually showing up in a real sense. Some fans believe we can expect to see a villain like Galactus show up to threaten Earth. He's a villain with ties to the Fantastic Four, so this could be the perfect way to introduce them to the MCU at some point in the future. According to the source, the movie ends with the funeral of Captain America and Tony retiring from crime fighting. During Infinity War, Pepper Potts seemed to be of the firm opinion that Tony should get out of the superhero business, and he definitely shouldn't travel through outer space. After being a hero and getting stranded in outer space, it seems like maybe Tony might finally be getting ready to listen to Pepper. A lot of these predictions do seem to be pretty plausible, but there is one which gives us pause. If you don't want to hear a spoiler for the mid-credit scene of Captain Marvel, you might want to check out one of our many other great videos. But if you don't mind hearing about it, we saw Captain Marvel show up looking for Nick Fury while our heroes were looking over the device he used to page her at the end of Infinity War. The source says Captain Marvel doesn't show up until the third act in Endgame, but this seems to be contradicted by the mid-credits scene. The scene could have been intentionally misleading, or maybe the sources got this part of the movie all wrong. As they themselves admitted, these things do change frequently. What do you think about these supposed Endgame spoilers? Do you think they're 100% correct, completely wrong, or somewhere in the middle? Tell us what you think in the comment section below. Then click on the subscribe button for more MCU videos from us here at CBR. Thanks for watching.